For centuries, Africa's story was written by others, enslavers, colonizers, outsiders who shaped a narrative to control minds and futures. Mainstream media has long painted Africa as broken, helpless, but that's not our truth. We are creators, dreamers, builders, our ancestors forged empires. Today we're shaping the future, our way. It's time to reclaim our narrative, tell our stories, celebrate our victories. Africans must control the pen that writes our future. Rise up, speak out, the world is listening. Africa's story is ours to tell. Let's write it together.
Great. Again, we look at that gold because Burkina Faso has amazing deposits of gold. But first of all, let's look at General Michael Langley. On April 3rd, there was the U.S. Armed Services Committee hearing in the U.S. Senate, and General Michael Langley showed up. He showed up to do a presentation that he does every year.
Okay.
This presentation, the purpose of it is to chart out the way forward for the U.S. Africa Command, because the U.S. has several commands, and every year they all must come up with a document that is clearly charting out what are they going to do for that year,
Yes.
what challenges are they facing, what threats are they facing, do they have any weaknesses. So it's a routine hearing that happens every year, and it happens to the U.S. Armed Services Committee. Now, in that particular committee, on April 3rd, less than a month ago, what happened is that he then made those claims. Number one, he said that Africa remains extremely important for America's national security. Now, Africans need to understand that the main thing that brings the US and Africa together are their own selfish interests for their national security. That's about it. Everything else revolves around that. Even whatever humanitarian support they provide occasionally, it is all meant to just beef up protecting their national security interests. So he explained within that hearing and said that in Burkina Faso, number one, he used the word junta, J-U-N-T-A, that the junta there is using the gold reserves to protect itself.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that in order to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
The first thing to unpack there is the semantics of the word junta. You see, when they say junta, they mean that a government that is in force, that is in power illegally, a government that took power by force. So the connotation of that is that it is an invalid government, it is an illegitimate government. So I urge African media houses to never use such words on African themselves, because this is not a junta, If there's any junta that is there, it is actually the US government under Donald Trump and previously under Joe Biden, because they also take power forcefully under the guise of democracy. But Trump himself is on record saying that the elections are not free and fair, you see. So if they call the Burkinabe government that it's a junta, they are doubly a junta than the Burkinabe government.
Yes.
Just to be clear about that. The reason I'm belaboring that point is these people like controlling Africa through narratives. And what they do with people like Ibrahim Traoré and previously somebody like Magufuli or even Gaddafi before him is when they say that you're in power illegitimately, when they create a narrative that then shows that you're in power illegitimately, with time, it starts to take hold. These things are very, very powerful. Anybody who is a master, an expert in advertising, will tell you that anything repeated over and over and over becomes the truth. It totally becomes the truth. So we must stop calling the Burkinabe government that the junta, the military junta there. So this guy, he used the word, the military junta is protecting itself using the reserves, the gold reserves. And he specifically mentioned Traoré, Capitan Traoré. Now, that might appear like it's just an anomaly, you know, but the reason I explained that this was a hearing in the US Armed Forces Committee is because it is now on record. And when it is on record in the second arm of the US government, the legislature, it is bordering policy, you know. It is now official that America regards the Ibrahim Traoré as somebody who is enriching himself and protecting his government using the gold reserves.
Yes.
In other words, he's a criminal.
Yes.
So they do that to start preparing the way for themselves. Because remember, during the Iraq War, George Bush had to claim over and over again that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That at the time you're saying it, there were people who were just dismissing him, that let him be, he's just saying. But you see, he was setting the stage for attacking
citizens.
Iraq.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
And when they finally attacked Iraq, we all know that they didn't find no weapons of mass destruction there. So similarly, when they start branding Traoré as a criminal because he's stealing the gold of his people, of Burkina Faso, to protect himself, then slowly they're achieving two things: building a narrative that this government is illegitimate, but also, and more sinister, more lethal, what they're also doing is to begin to lay the groundwork of taking action. Now, let me remind people that in January 2024, the same General Michael Langley showed up in Chad. And while in Chad, he met the military leaders in Chad, because Chad remains one of the few West African countries that still has a military cooperation with the US of A. So this same general went to Chad in 2024. Remember, 2024 January, Traoré was now being accepted globally as a different kind of a leader.
Yes.
So these people are very painstaking in positioning themselves and the action they take. The reason he was in Chad was to ostensibly agree on a military cooperation. So as we speak, there are special forces of USA in Chad. There are special forces of USA in Côte d'Ivoire as we speak. Côte d'Ivoire is a neighboring country to Burkina Faso. So Africans should learn to join the dots, should learn to look at the facts and understand that, again, we go back to Thomas Sankara. Imperialism being a bad student, imperialism having the habit of repeating its tactics over and over because they have run out of ideas. So when you look at that, you begin to see now imperialism behaving as it has behaved before. Because now we have the US Special Forces in Côte d'Ivoire.
Yes.
We have the US Special Forces in Chad. And they are saying that the government in Burkina Faso is a criminal government because it is using proceeds from the gold to protect itself. So when you begin to join these dots, you begin to realize that this is not about conspiracy theories, neither is it about paranoia, but clearly there's something brewing. There's something happening.
Yes.
The difference with what has been happening in the past is that Africans are awakening. Because 2 days ago, on April 30th, Wednesday, Africans and people across the world responded to General Michael Langley's assertion during that hearing when there are all those demonstrations in Burkina Faso, in prison, in Kenya, across the world, there are all those demonstrations in support of Ibrahim Traoré and what he represents. And many of them were saying, hands off Ibrahim Traoré. So that's the difference this time. Previously, all these things would be happening beneath the radar, and then one day you wake up to the headline, coup d'etat in Burkina Faso. Or God forbid, something even worse than that. But now people are awakening. Now, what people have to do is to go further. Because when your enemy is making moves and positioning themselves in a very concrete manner, like they're doing, then we cannot afford to fight special forces in Chad and in Cote d'Ivoire with mere rhetoric. We cannot afford to do that. So I'm not saying that Africans should take up arms and go there, but we have to come up with very, very concrete means that how do we rebut this? How do we fight this? And one of the things is what you are already doing here by even having this session, so that Africans can be increasingly knowledgeable, even in their awakening. Yeah.
God, every time you speak.
That's a wrap, folks. But before you go, keep this in mind. Their smoke and mirrors are just theatrics, pulling your focus from what truly matters. The real fight? It's always been about the land and the economy. Stay sharp, stay woke, and we'll catch you next time.
The most important person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs.